Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Well, spring is in the air. We are about to enter into the beauty of spring. It's one of my favorite seasons. We have such delight in the warmth that comes over us, the beauty of all the flowers and the trees popping, and there's just this sense of newness, a new sense of beginning. And it's interesting to me that our calendar year starts in the dead of winter. You know, we're setting our trajectory for the year. We're thinking about our financial goals. We're talking about, hopefully, our stewardship goals for the year. But we're doing that in a season where everything feels really dark and gray and sad. And so it is really hard to get the energy to put behind those things that might involve a lot of change, because in the dead of winter, it's easier to just kind of curl up and wait it out. Spring for me is a great time to step into a reflection on what's happened so far and how your stewardship journey has changed through the first quarter of the year. This is a time we normally just kind of breeze right through. We enjoy the warmth. We get out and play, and that's all great. Do all those things. That's wonderful. But also, this is a wonderful time as a family to step into a conversation around where are we? We're 90 days in to this year. Before we get all the way into summer and we get all the way into the fall, and we actually are now at a place where if we are making mistakes consistently, or we are not making progress on the things we committed to, by then, if we look at it in the middle of the year or even the third quarter of the year, we're going to tell ourselves, well, it's too late now. We'll just try again next year. Spring is a time where we actually might be able to still pull it off, even if we've been off track for the first few months of the year. This is a great season, not just because we're finally getting out of the dead of winter, but because all of the stuff that's happening around us is change. And we actually can join in that change, renewal, resetting, recommitting, and saying, let's do it differently. And so we can join in some of that energy rather than just kind of breezing past it and missing an opportunity to level set and get back on track. And so what do we need to do as we think about this in the springtime setting? I think one of the first things we need to do is take this to the Lord. Let's actually engage in prayer and ask God, where am I? Have I been faithful in stewarding the resources that you've given me? This is not a time for us to judge ourselves, beat ourselves up, have this sense of self-loathing. This is just an honest conversation where we can ask the owner of the resources, how am I doing with your resources? Am I missing something? Am I over-accumulating and over-hoarding and creating this sense of security from my wealth? Am I overindulging and being selfish in these resources? Am I spending so much on myself just because I want to feel better? Those are really hard, honest conversations that I think we need to be having because they're not our resources. And if we truly believe that, we should be checking in with the owner from time to time to see what he thinks. Maybe you made some goals at the beginning of the year. Maybe as a family, you sat down and you said, hey, we're going to really focus on paying down debt, or we're going to really get serious about building toward retirement, or making sure we have an emergency fund, or paying off our car, whatever those things were. Maybe you set out to really track your spending and understand what your life costs you. Are you doing those things? This is a great time of year to evaluate honestly without destroying yourself and feeling bad, because there's still time. Even if you started in January and you were super intentional with tracking, and then February was a little bit of a miss, it's easy to go back and catch up. It's not like you've got 8 months worth of data that you've got to somehow rebuild. You're only talking about a few weeks worth of stuff here. You can do this. You can catch back up to your intention. That's why I love this time of year. As you review that, as you reflect on how things have gone so far, celebrate the victories. Recognize where God has provided. Recognize the things that happened that show you his goodness, show you his care for you. Be aware of how things came through, maybe that you had no control over, but that made a big difference in your ability to hit some of these targets if you've been on track. Also, acknowledge where you fell short. Understand why that happened. Confess the things that have been hindering you and distracting you, and pray for God to give you the strength to push through those and recommit to the things that you said you were going to be about this year. If there are goals as you look back that you're not meeting, that you've been off track, you're not paying attention, you're being more reckless in your spending, you're not making any headway on that debt that you're hoping to pay off, this is a great time to understand why. Did something happen that you didn't predict? Was there something that you weren't prepared for? Was there something that came out of nowhere and you're beating yourself up, but the honest truth is that was something you couldn't have seen coming, and you just have to roll with some of those consequences until they're over? Or are there things that really were realistic that you should have been able to do and you're not? What are the habits that are forming that are keeping you from hitting some of those targets in your stewardship journey? Maybe some of the goals that you set weren't realistic. Maybe you said to yourself, we're going to have all of this debt paid off by the end of March, but that would have taken way more resources than you actually brought in this quarter. And so maybe we need to readjust and reevaluate what is doable in our current context. So there's a reason why some of these things didn't happen. And it may be a combination of things, stuff that was out of your control, stuff that was definitely in your control, or just a target that was way too hard to hit. And all of those things in combination leave you where you are. Well, now's the time to readjust. And so if the goal wasn't realistic, let's adjust it. Let's edit it. Let's bring it to a place where we have more confidence now that we have some experience under our belt. If there isn't a discipline in place, if you've not been tracking your spending well, what will it take for you to carve out the space to give the time and attention to God's resources that he deserves you would give him, right? That you would honor him by paying attention and being thoughtful. How do we recommit to that discipline, and what needs to get out of the way in order for that discipline to be available to you? And if something unforeseen came up, if it knocked you back, if it sent you on your heels and you're still in recovery mode, that's okay, but map out what recovery from that looks like. Be thoughtful about how long some of these things will take now because of that setback. But that doesn't mean you're not going to keep going. It doesn't mean you quit. It just means now it takes 8 months instead of 6. That's okay. Do a level set and get yourself back to a place of confidence that you can continue to make progress in your journey towards faithful stewardship. So as you've looked back, you've been grateful for what has happened. You've recognized the stuff that you want to take ownership of the decisions that you made as you reflected. You are reassessing and readjusting and reorganizing going forward. Now the question is, as we look forward, what are we intentionally stepping into? How do we make sure that the decisions that we're making are going to be moving us towards faithful stewardship rather than further away? And so one great question that comes up this time of year is, are you anticipating, or maybe you already got, a tax refund? What are you going to do with that money? What's the right decision to make? Let's make that decision before the money's in your account, before you get the potential to have that temptation to go blow it on something or medicate an emotion, feel better by buying something that you want in order to get that jolt of dopamine. We don't want to mess up that opportunity to make a giant step towards faithful stewardship because we weren't thinking intentionally. When that money hits your account, you're going to have every reason to blow it. All kinds of opportunities. It feels, unfortunately, the way that the tax system is set up, it feels like free money. It's not. It's your money. You put it in there all throughout last year, but now all of a sudden, because you overpaid, you get it back. That doesn't mean it's extra. It means it's just something that you overpaid into in the tax system, and now you're getting what you overpaid back. Use this wisely. Don't make a mistake here. If you're planning a summer vacation as you're looking through this year, are you on track to save well for that and to pay cash for all of those things? Are you able to pull off what you said you're going to do without going deeper into debt? If the answer is no, this is the time to make adjustments. If this first quarter knocked you back because something unexpected happened, we need to recognize the consequence of that setback may be that going forward, we don't get to do some of the things we hoped we were going to do. Reevaluate what the rest of this year is going to look like in order to make sure that when you get into the next season, you're not setting yourself up for yet another reflection that is disappointing because you didn't make the changes that you needed to make now. Have you been including your family so far in the conversation of faithful stewardship this year? What has that looked like for you? Now is a great opportunity as we have things like spring breaks and we have all these times where we're connecting with each other. We're outside more. We're taking walks. Those are opportunities for us to start having conversations about the stuff that you're dealing with. Invite your kids in to knowing what it really takes to be faithful in your stewardship. What are you saving? What does that mean? What are the consequences of some of the decisions that you're making? And how do we share that as a family? We need this to be a conversation that is happening with all of the members, not just mom and dad. Because if mom and dad are doing it and they're not including the kids, then the kids will always assume there's enough. They'll always assume we should be able to do the vacation. We should be able to do these other things. If we don't have these intentional conversations, they won't learn that there are trade-offs that you're navigating. And then when it's time for them to navigate their own trade-offs, they may make the wrong decisions. And so this is a great time as you've had 90 days of navigating these things to update your family on how it's going and what that means for the rest of the year. And then lastly, I want to invite you into this thought of spring cleaning. You know, spring cleaning is something we do around our house. We try to just clear out all of the dust and the cobwebs and open the windows and just let out the stuff that needs to get refreshed. And the same can be true in our finances. And so what are some of the things that are bogging you down in your spending that are just there by inertia, by habit? Maybe there's streaming services that you just continue to pay for, but you haven't used it in the last 3 months. Get rid of it. Maybe there are membership dues or magazine subscriptions, or there's things that you're paying for and they're renewing, but you aren't actually engaging in what you're paying for. this is a great time to start cleaning house and getting rid of the things that you know are just cobwebs. They're just things taking up space that you actually have no use for. And if we do that work, then we free up the resources we need to actually get back on track and hit these goals throughout the rest of the year. And so this is a great opportunity for us to take a deep breath of beautiful spring air and put that energy into recommitting, reinvigorating our steps towards faithful stewardship. And this will change the trajectory of the rest of the year if we do it now. This is the window to really engage in this thoughtful process with your entire family, because this is the work that God calls us to. It is worth the effort. It is worth the attention. It's worth thinking about these things over and over and over again and talking about them as a family so that we can have confidence that we are honoring God with His resources. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you all have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.